Welcome back, Mets fans, to another week of Raise the Apple. And the New York Mets have split their four-game series with the Washington Nationals, coming off a Subway Series win, coming off a sweep of the Tigers. They are playing much, much better baseball really since the calendar flipped to May. They've been one of the best teams in Major League Baseball, and now they'll head to Miami for a three-game series with the Marlins, and hopefully they can continue to get it going. They've clawed their way all the way back to 6 games under 500, which still got a lot of work to do at that point, but slowly the Mets are getting there. They have tied the Marlins for last place in the division, which, I mean, again, doesn't sound like a lot, but given where the Mets were, it is progress. They are no longer the worst team in the National League. They've got some cushion between them and the Rockies and the Giants, so things are definitely starting to look better, and I think the biggest takeaway over the last 2 weeks or so of how much better the Mets have been playing is just how bad they were in the month of April, because they were so bad that in the month of May they have, record-wise, been top 3 or 4 best teams in the entire sport, and they have made what feels like and is no ground in the standings. So that's just the way baseball works sometimes, especially with the way the National League has been playing this year. The American League is off to a horrible start compared to the National League. In the National League, you got almost 10 teams that are over 500. So that's going to be the tough part for the Mets is when they're getting back into the race is, yes, once they get back to 500 and start winning, now you got to start picking off teams, but you're going to need some help. And you're going to need teams to start losing. And in the National League, just the way the year has started, it just doesn't appear like it's going to. It's going to take a lot of work to get to that point. But I do certainly think, as I've said a million times before, the Mets are still in it. I do think probably, I think talked about it last week, the division probably out of reach at this point, barring a historic collapse from the Braves, just the way they've started the year. But the Mets are certainly in play with the wild card. I don't think the Cardinals are going to sustain the level of production that they're doing right now. Just looking record-wise, the Padres and Cubs are the other two wild card teams. The Cardinals have that third spot right now, and then it's the Diamondbacks and Pirates, who are each 2.5 games back, and they are both only 2 games over 500. The Cardinals right now are 7 games over in that final wildcard spot. They've been playing fantastic baseball of late, but again, I personally don't think that the Cardinals are going to be able to sustain what they're doing. I know a lot of people think that the tarps off stuff is kind of going to be their rallying cry for this year. I just don't think the Cardinals are going to. I think they're a solid team. I know the last few years they've been very rough, but I do think they're a much better team this year. But Mets split the series with the Nationals after dominating Game 1. They had a 10-run 12th inning, lose the next 2, and then bounce back today. Bo Bichette with a 2-run single proved to be the difference maker, and Bo Bichette, we'll kind of start with there, had an interview with Ken Rosenthal, The Athletic, that came out earlier this week, talking about his struggles. He was being very open and very vulnerable about it, saying how he wants the Mets and Mets fans to see the guy perform that they signed. That, yes, it's nice that he has those opt-outs, but he signed it in his head as a 3-year deal, not 3 one-year deals with opt-outs. And after seeing his response and seeing how he's performed after that and how he performed before that, this National Series, he was fantastic. It's just, baseball's such a mental game. I think Bo Bichette was just so in his head, and I think getting it out the way he did in that interview has actually helped him, because this National Series, he was everywhere. He hit 3 home runs. He drove in 9 RBI in this series. He was just everywhere offensively, and I think getting it out there, getting it off his chest, I think helped him a lot. And if the Mets are going to get back in this race, they are going to need Bo Bichette, especially with the injury to Francisco Lindor and Luis Robert and Jorge Polanco, and we don't know when all those guys are coming back. Bo Bichette is going to be that guy with Juan Soto. Obviously, Carson Bench has been fantastic over the last 2 or 3 weeks as well, which has helped. But Bo Bichette is going to be the key piece for this Mets team as the year goes on. And it was just nice to see him finally put it all together in this National Series, finally start to see the ball bounce his way. It just seems like he's one of the unluckiest hitters in baseball, and statistically he was. His expected batting average at one point, I want to say it was like 270 or 280, and he was hitting about 210. So that's just sometimes the ball doesn't fall in your way, and it's nice that in Bo Bichette's case, it finally has started to work out for him. But we're going to go back a little bit more. After the Tigers sweep, we had the Subway Series. Round 1 of the Subway Series, Mets take 2 out of 3. Come back in Game 3, Tyrone Taylor with the game-tying 3-run homer in the 9th inning, and then Carson Bench with the walk-off hit when the Yankees did the weird 5 infielders in, and it just didn't work out for them. Mets take 2 out of 3, and it did not come without some drama and bad news, as Clay Holmes is going to be out for a while with an injury and broken tibia. And that one sucked because it came out of absolutely nowhere, and that the Mets have dealt with a lot of injuries this year. But again, I don't like using the injury excuse because every team deals with injuries. In the Mets-Tigers series, with the amount of injuries that both sides had, you could very well have a full roster based on how many players each side had injured. Clay Holmes, I don't think he was going to be like a top contender for the Cy Young with the way Christopher Sanchez and Jacob Mizorowski have started the year, and of course with Paul Skeens and Ohtani being who they are. But I definitely think that Clay Holmes was going to get some Cy Young votes. I know it would have been probably lower place Cy Young votes. He has been the difference maker in keeping this rotation intact with him, McLean, and Peralta, especially with McLean's last start being his first real stinker. And losing him for the foreseeable future sucks. And we saw the reporting how the Mets locker room was kind of dead quiet and left kind of quickly after that injury. I mean, the ball hit off of him, and it's one of those things, like, there's nothing you can do. Spencer Jones hits it, and there's nothing you can do. Like, there's no... I don't even know. It's just Mets luck at this point, because Clay Holmes gets injured with that, but Cam Schlittler felt like he was getting hit left, right, and sideways from balls and tumbling all over the place, and he was perfectly fine the whole time. So it's just one of those LOL Mets moments where guys are just going to have to step up. I know Freddie Peralta has been better of late in the Subway Series. That Subway Series start, walks were the issue. Nolan McLean, his last start against the Nationals, was his first bad start of his career, but I don't think due is the right word, but he was due. It's hard to expect him to go 7 innings, giving up only 1 or 2 runs, 10 strikeouts every single time. He's going to have 1 or 2 starts here and there where he's just not good, and that's okay. To me, it's more about how does McLean bounce back from that start. So now you're looking at McLean and Peralta leading the charge, and you need other guys to step up. Christian Scott has been serviceable in the rotation since his return. David Peterson was good today against the Nationals. He needed that, and I think he's going to be a fixture. The Mets have called up Zach Thornton to fill in a rotation spot. He didn't have the best Major League debut, but he didn't have the worst. A lot of the damage was done on one swing with the C.J. Abrams homer. You do have Wettinger still in AAA, but Jonah Tong is in play to start one of the Miami games just to give the rotation a little bit of relief, a little bit of rest. And you do have Senga, who's starting a rehab assignment later this week. So hopefully when you get him back, you're getting back Senga that you want, and that'll help out the rotation as well. There is some scuttlebutt that I saw on Twitter today about Tarik Skubal. If his trade market could heat up, just given the Tigers' struggles to start the year. But given that Skubal's had the surgery with the loose bodies, I don't really know how likely that trade is going to happen. But I do think because of the loose bodies, that trade is going to maybe cost little less than it has. And I just need a sip of water right now. if you live in New York State, it's finally starting to get warmer, and my allergies the first couple days with the weather being really nice have really been annoying. But anyway, when you have Senga starting his rehab assignment and coming back, and you hope that you're getting a better Senga. I mean, it seems like that the injury has resolved itself. You never really know with him. And if Tong can come up, I know he's struggled in AAA this year. His last start especially was a little rough. I do think Tong can be a key part of this rotation going forward. We don't know exactly what we're going to get with Zach Thornton. We've only seen him for one start, so it's just this nice blend of the young guys with the veterans that is working for the Mets right now. It started with Benj starting the year with the team. Then they brought up Thornton, they brought up Ewing, they brought up Nick Morabito, who we'll talk about a little later. And it's just right now, this youthful injection into the lineup is working. So I hope it does continue in the rotation. It's a little riskier in the rotation just because young pitchers, I think, are more risky than young position players. It's a lot harder to hide young pitchers when they're struggling than it is position players. So it'll all work out the way it needs to for the Mets in this rotation. They just need Peterson to build on his strong outing today. They need Senga to come back fully healthy and be the runner-up rookie of the year that Senga was, or at least some version of that. And I think the Mets will be fine. But here's the one thing I want to talk about with the Subway Series, kind of backtracking a little bit. Mets win 2 out of 3. And Mets fans, of course, part of the rivalry. Mets fans are excited, they're pumped up. Then you see Yankees fans online. Oh, this is their World Series. This is this. Look where you are in the standings. So what? You lost 2 out of 3. Yankees fans sit there and act like they wouldn't be doing the exact same trash talking if they didn't win 2 out of 3 or if they swept round 1 of the Subway Series. It is just sometimes some of my closest friends are Yankees fans too. And I tell them this is the same way. Sometimes the Yankee fan base is some of the most obnoxious people on planet Earth. I don't understand why. They are still on this Juan Soto train for some reason. Get over it. He chose the Mets over the Yankees. Who cares if it was for more money? Who cares what the reasoning was? He picked the Mets over the Yankees. Deal with it. And then in the Subway Series comes around and, you hear the boos in the crowd, but it's not the Mets fans. It's the Yankees fans that have come over. And then when, I believe it's 9/11 weekend, because I think 9/11 is a Friday this year, if I'm not mistaken. So that Friday, Saturday, Sunday is round 2 of the Subway Series at Yankee Stadium, which I love. I think it's good for the sport and good for New York City to have the Mets and Yankees play each other 9/11 weekend. Just from the meaning of that day and just the history of it, I think that is just, I think that's a good time to have it. If the Yankees win 2 out of 3 that time, then so be it. The last few years, the Mets have won more often than not. They've handled the Yankees pretty well over the last few years. And I expect that trend to continue, especially in September when the Mets are hopefully still in the playoff race. The Yankees are probably be in a division race with the Rays just because the Rays are the Rays every single year. Somehow they keep doing this. And Yankees fans annoy me so much that they just I could go on forever about Yankees fans, but that is a debate for another time. And it was just nice that the Mets won 2 out of 3. Obviously you want to sweep, but when it comes to your crosstown rivals like that, but I like also it was rivalry weekend across the league. Every rivalry made sense, except for there were 2 of them. I think out west, the Diamondbacks and Rockies were together. That was just an interdivision game. And then there's one other one. I can't remember what it was. But, you had the Lone Star battle with Texas, or of course it was Texas, with the Texas Rangers and the Houston Astros. You had the Chicago rivalry. You had Nationals, Orioles. You had Royals, Cardinals. It was just a good rivalry weekend across the league. Just I like that idea. I think they can promote it a little more or make a much bigger thing about it, especially when you have the cities with two teams like New York and Chicago. I think you can put in Los Angeles. I think you can put a little more. I think we could put a little more into that, but that's just me being nitpicky at this point. The other prospect the Mets have called up is Nick Morabito, and that did not come without some drama as well with his number. And I have definitely a hot take on this. Definitely in the minority on the way I think about it. And I think this might be just because it's a generational thing. So Nick Morabito gets called up. He is a lot like Ewing, where he is known for his speed, his defense. He's a scrappy player. Not good, not a big bopper, which is fine. But he comes up and he gets number 8. And Mets Twitter has a meltdown over this because of Gary Carter. I get it, but I think it was blown way out of proportion. So Nick Morabito, after one game, was too late to change his number before that game, so then he changed it to 55, which he'll be rocking moving forward. Number 8 has been unofficially retired in Mets lands for about 20-some years, I want to say. I can't remember the last time I've seen a Met wear number 8. It was one of those unofficial retired situations. And out of respect for Gary Carter, players weren't wearing number 8. It was kind of the same way with David Wright until last year when his number finally was retired, just because it took a little longer to do that. No one wore number 5 after 2018 when David Wright was done. So from 2018 till the summer of 2025, no one was wearing number 5. Out of respect to David Wright. It was like unofficially retired, and then the Mets finally did it. With Gary Carter, I think this is a lot different than other people in Mets history. Now, I also think it's a generation. Quickly, I'll say it's a generational thing, I think, because Gary Carter was a key piece of that 1986 World Series team. And a lot of Mets fans, older Mets fans, obviously associate themselves with the 86 team because that's the team they grew up with. It's one of the best teams in franchise history, if not the best team. And the younger generation, I guess my generation, not that I don't understand their love for him. I don't know how to word it. I didn't see Gary Carter play. I can only go off the old videos from the 86 World Series run, from stuff like that, or just looking at his numbers on Baseball Reference. I didn't physically get to watch him play. So obviously my perspective on Gary Carter is going to be a lot different from someone who grew up in the 80s. Gary Carter is a Hall of Famer. He's had a 19-year Major League career. Most of that was with Montreal. He is in the Hall of Fame as a Montreal Expo. He spent 4 or 5 years with the Mets. His first 2 years with the Mets, one of which included that 1986 World Series run, he was very good. His last 2 years with the Mets, numbers-wise, were not the best. He finished 3rd in the MVP voting in one of his years with the Mets. His best MVP finish, he was the runner-up in one of his years with the Expos. And then it came out today that in the offseason, it was turned down, officially retiring Gary Carter's number 8. As a Mets fan, when I think of Gary Carter, I think of him as a Met, just because of him being a Mets fan, him being on the 86 team, him playing a huge role on that 86 team. To the general baseball fan, I don't know. I'm very curious to see what people would say. Does the general baseball fan, a non-Expos fan and a non-Mets fan, everyone else, when you hear Gary Carter, do you think of him as a Met or do you think of him as a Montreal Expo? And this is not meant to disrespect Gary Carter and his impact with the Mets in any way. I'm just generally saying, if you ask a random baseball fan in Cooperstown who's not an Expos fan, who's not a Mets fan, when you think of Gary Carter, do you think of his time with the Mets or his time with the Expos? I think more people would say Expos only because he spent 12 years of his almost 20-year career with the Expos and only a few years with the Mets. Now, that's not diminishing his time with the Mets, but from the Mets organizational standpoint, you can't retire every single guy that was on that 1986 team. Now, whether Gary Carter's number should be retired by the Mets, I could see the argument both ways. I could see why the Mets would do it, and I wouldn't be against it if the Mets did it. But I also am not upset that it's not retired by the Mets. Because his legacy, numbers-wise, the bulk of his career was with Montreal. Now, a lot of people bring up Beltran. Well, the bulk of Beltran's career, he spent 7 years with the Mets, and he also spent 7 years with the Royals. And then, the 2 or 3 years with the Yankees, year with the Astros, the year with the Cardinals, all that stuff. But the bulk of his career was between the Mets and the Royals. But when you look at Carlos Beltran's career numbers, the majority of his production came from his time with the Mets. He was a beast during his time with the Mets. And so was Gary Carter the first couple years. But Carlos Beltran also going into Cooperstown as a Met. If you ask a lot of baseball fans, I feel like a lot of non-Mets baseball fans, a lot of them would say they associate Carlos Beltran with the Mets more than they do with the Royals. Obviously, Royals fans, Mets fans would be a little biased in that, but I do think the general baseball fan would say they would consider Carlos Beltran a Met or his association with the Astros during the cheating scandal. So it's a double-edged sword. I think it was something that was avoidable by the Mets to avoid that headache of giving him number 8. I don't know if there was a miscommunication or if they were like, we have the number 8, just give him the number 8, or what the case was. I think it was an avoidable situation by the Mets, but I also think the response to it was very over the top. Or not very over the top. I think it was a little blown out of proportion. I understand why Mets fans were upset, but I also don't think it was, it's that catastrophic of a thing, if that makes sense. That may have been the wrong word choice, but I think you guys get my point. Would Gary Carter's number 8 ever get retired after this? I feel like that has to be back in play, retiring number 8. Here's my thing with retired numbers. The Yankees have too many retired numbers, to the point I think they only have like one single-digit number available still. But when you also look at Yankees history and some of the guys that have played for them, it kind of makes sense. When you look, I don't want the Mets to go down that path where they're just retiring every single number. Because when you look at, if Gary Carter gets retired, his number 8 gets retired, well now, just based on his time with the Mets, it was a short time, his short time with the Mets, he did have a huge impact in that time, but okay, now look at Jacob deGrom. When his career is all said and done, do you retire 48? Even though he wasn't a lifelong Met, he finished his career in Texas, but just of how good his production was when he was with the Mets. Do you look at Alonso when his career is done? Maybe Nimmo might be a stretch. Lindor and Soto, obviously, when their career is done, they'll probably have 12 and 20 retired. It's just one of those things where I don't want us to get number retirement happy. I mean, the numbers the Mets have done of late, David Wright was the right choice, obviously. I think Beltran's a good choice. The only one that is weird to me is Willie Mays, to be honest. That's the only number that the Mets have retired recently that I'm like, that's really strange. Why are we retiring Willie Mays' number? But I think that Cohen and the Mets have done a great job of catching up on the past and fixing, the past mistakes with that, and now putting up David Wright's number 5. This year, putting up Beltran. They went back and did Doc and Darryl, and now they're just fixing everything. I think with Beltran, I think that the Mets wanted to retire Beltran's number probably a while ago, but with the Astros scandal, waiting for everything to kind of calm down from that, I think enough time has passed that it's okay to retire number 15. And I think people have gotten over the Astro scandal. It's just, I think that, again, it was a headache that could have been avoided by the Mets, but I do think that this response to it was a little much from Mets fans. And again, that might be a generation thing. A lot of older Mets fans were a lot more vocal about it than my generation of Mets fans, so maybe that has something to do with it. It's just, it's one of those things, like, I get it, but I'm like, it's kind of one of those. So, it is what it is. Nick Morabito has yet to get his first hit, so he's the one that's a little slow out of the gate, but it's okay, plenty of time. And might have Jonah Tong coming up on the way in the near future for this series in Miami, give the rotation a little bit of a breather. I want Jonah Tong to work out so much. I really hope he does. I think he will. Initially, I think I said this last year, McLean is going to be the best. Of the trio at the time when it was McLean, Tong, and Sproat, McLean was going to be the best. Tong had the highest upside, and Sproat was going to be the, I hate saying this, but the forgotten one. Like, he was going to be good, but you forget he's there because of Tong and McLean. Obviously, now that Sproat is in Milwaukee, and it's just Tong and McLean, I do still think the same way. It's just, I want Tong to work out so well. I'm excited for him. I hope he gets an opportunity in Miami or at some point this year and he delivers. I think especially if, depending on what you get back from Senga, he'll be a key piece to help this rotation down the stretch. And the Mets have played themselves into a much better position over the last 2 weeks. 7-3 in their last 10. Devin Williams has been fantastic over his last 10 outings. It's starting to come together. I know they had such a big hole to dig out of when, just from the 12-game losing streak, just such a big hole to dig out, and they've almost gotten there. Once you get back to 500, that's step one. Then start picking off teams and climbing up the wild card standings. But right now, you just got to get to 500. You have a big series with the Marlins this weekend, just for the sake of keeping the momentum going, getting some more wins under your belt. And notice how, a lot of Mets fans are still mad at Mendoza, but notice how the firing Mendoza gets real quiet when you win. A lot of things get a lot quieter when you start winning. So hopefully the Mets can keep it rolling into Miami. And then let me pull up schedule quick. So after Miami, and the Mets are also only 6.5 games back of the wild card. So there is time. Plenty of time. It's not early. We're over a quarter of the way into the season, but there's definitely time to make up 6.5 games. After this series with the Marlins, the Mets are home for 3 games with the Reds, 3 games with the Marlins, and then they head out west to battle the Mariners and Padres. I believe that is their last West Coast trip of the season, which is nice that they finally get the West Coast trips done before, or into June. We'll be into June at that point. But at the start of June, that's very nice because they were on the West Coast for freaking 6 different times the first 3 weeks of the season, which was very annoying. So it'll be nice to have those games done and over with. A little bit of a longer episode today, but that's going to pretty much wrap it up. The Mets are playing much better baseball of late, and hopefully they can continue that into this weekend series with the Marlins, starting to get more division games under their belt, and hopefully they can keep the winning going. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and Apple Podcasts at RTA_pod and on TikTok and Twitter. And make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. We will see everyone next week, and we'll do more Mets updates next week, and then kind of an update around Major League Baseball, standings update, stats leaders, things like that. We'll get into that. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe, and let's go Mets.